So about 2 weeks ago, I put out a video ranking the Godzilla Showa series, so I think it's time to rank the Heisei era, aka the 1984 to 1995 Godzilla films. Personally, I think it's the most consistent timeline for Godzilla, and I like basically all these movies, but which ones are the best? Now remember, this is just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say down below with your own ranking or top 3 of the Heisei era. Apparently my ranking of some of these Showa films was a little bit controversial, but I can only speak for myself, so I'd love to see what you guys have to say down below. I'm not afraid to ruffle some feathers with my ranking, so with that said, let's go from worst to first and rank up these puppies. Now, there will be some spoilers ahead, so you've been warned. And coming in at number 7 is Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Now, I know a lot of people like this movie. It seems to be a fan favorite for some, and while I think these scenes featuring Godzilla and Ghidorah are fun, the story itself seems to be bogged down by the outlandish time travel plot and the obvious influences of American media at the time, namely Jurassic Park and Terminator. The human characters seem at their most cartoonish as well and lack the sincerity of the first few films in the Heisei era, and the twist ending where the time-traveling female character, I forget her name, is related to the main character feels a little tacked on with only like a one-sentence explanation. But that doesn't mean I dislike this movie. Like I said before, the Heisei era is my favorite for the Big G, so even the weakest film for me is still pretty entertaining. Okay, and sliding at number 6 is Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Now, I really wanted to love this movie because I absolutely love the design of Space Godzilla. He's one of my favorite looking kaijus, but this film seems to be the most clunky, both in execution of Space Godzilla's motivations and also the human storyline. While it can sometimes be fun, it feels a little contrived. I also don't fully understand why they didn't just use Mechagodzilla again. Ghidorah seems like a pretty pale placeholder, but like the previous film, what makes this one fun is the battles and the destruction. I think Godzilla fighting Space Godzilla looks pretty amazing. While Little Godzilla's design in this film looks the worst he'll ever look, both the original G and Space G look great. So all in all, not an amazing entry for the series, but I think the battles elevated to not be at the bottom of my list. And getting into the top 5 is going to have to be Godzilla vs. Mothra. Now this is overall a really fun entry, but what holds it back for me is it feels like the biggest retread in the Heisei era, as the plot is basically the same as the original Mothra vs. Godzilla, but it adds in Batra to spice things up a little bit. It also, like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, wears its influences on its sleeve, namely a real Indiana Jones feeling opening, but I feel like the human characters are handled with a bit more grace here, even though the romantic relationship feels a little surface level. It never takes me out of the movie, and it gives me something to root for with the humans. Now, there isn't as much Godzilla in this movie as the other films, as it was originally written as a Mothra solo story, but when he shows up, the battles between the 3 kaijus look great, so all in all, I have fun with this entry. I just wish they didn't repeat so much from the Showa films. And speaking about films that repeat from the Showa series, we have a direct sequel in name only at number 4, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Now this is a very solid entry in the Godzilla franchise. I think the monster battles are at their best in the Heisei era, and the suits for both Mechagodzilla and Godzilla look great. Also like how they coordinate their attacks on Godzilla to take him down, and the unradiated Baby Godzilla storyline is also a nice touch to the series, and his suit animation and his relationship with the humans is actually a highlight of the film. I also like how Godzilla is treated with a serious tone in this entry, and his short-lived death allows a victory for the humans, but of course he gets out like a minute later, so the victory is very short-lived. The goodbye scene between Baby Godzilla and the humans is also one of my favorites of the series, so all in all this is a very solid entry, and I certainly do recommend watching it if you are a casual Godzilla fan. So now we come to the coveted top 3 spots, and I had a very hard time deciding who would go where with these films, especially because the next 3 entries I consider to be top tier, not just for the Heisei era, but for Godzilla in general. So for the number 3 spot, I'm gonna have to go with 1984's The Return of Godzilla. This is a hard reboot of the franchise, ignoring all the sequels and picking up 30 years after the first with a new Godzilla, or maybe it's the same Godzilla. The dialogue seems to contradict itself in this movie compared to the other ones, but nonetheless, this Godzilla's return was epic on all scales. The suitmation and special effects drastically improved, and the slow introduction of Godzilla builds suspense for the character once again. I also think the solution the humans find to trap Godzilla in the final is very clever. I don't know, maybe I'm alone, but the shot of him falling into the volcano near the end is pretty heart-wrenching. Even though he's the bad guy in this film, they're able to make him more like a sympathetic predator. The only weak part for me is the human storyline doesn't quite match the 1954 film, but it's suitable for the original Godzilla's reboot story. Okay, so I'm sure you guys are licking your lips and wondering what's gonna be number 2. Well, you won't have to wonder for too long, because coming in at second place is Godzilla vs. Destroyer, or Destroyer-ra. however you want to pronounce this. This is pretty close to hitting number 1. Not only does it have some of the best fight scenes, the best version of Godzilla Junior, a great evolving kaiju for Godzilla to fight that directly relates to what killed the original Godzilla, but it's also able to wrap up Godzilla's storyline in the Heisei era with grace. The burning Godzilla look in this film is also amazing and adds a serious threat for the humans to overcome. So while Godzilla is a destructive force in this film, he's not really viewed as a full-on bad guy, which usually would bother me, but Destroya makes up for it by being possibly the best kaiju he faces off in the Heisei series, and possibly in the whole series. We also feel the emotions between Godzilla and his son, which adds a lot of sympathy to the kaiju storyline this time out. So all in all, the final Heisei film is one of the best. So what could be better than the final entry? Well, it's the first of the Heisei versus films, Godzilla vs. Biollante. We again have a kaiju in Biollante that evolves during the film, a musical score that is one of the best in the series, a new look for Godzilla that was so good that its basic design will be used in all subsequent films within this era, and interesting themes of eco-biotechnology and humans interfering purposely with nature, since Biollante is created with Godzilla cells, other plant structure, and human DNA. We also get Mickey's first appearance, a human character that would continue to appear throughout the series, as her psychic powers come in handy, quite frequently it seems, while the human subplot involves eco-terrorists and assassination attempts that make the story engaging when the monsters are on screen, and the battle between Biollante and Godzilla near the end manages to both be a great send-off to the kaijus and the human storyline. Now this may not be the most action-packed entry of the era, but I think it's the most consistent from start to finish, and manages to make me connect the best with both the humans and the kaiju during this era of Godzilla films. So what do you guys think of my rankings? Do you agree or do you have your own opinions about the franchise? Feel free to leave your thoughts down below. And before I sign off, I want to thank the Gaming Toast and Adrian for joining the Patreon, as well as all my other supporters. I just did a vote on the Patreon for the next horror related character, so stay tuned on the main channel for that video coming soon. And if you check out the channel now, there may actually be a bonus video that a lot of you guys are asking for, so give that a look at Adobe Animated. And until next time, keep on keeping on!